Hello, everyone, and welcome to CripChat, your weekly podcast on everything disability. And I also acknowledge that I'm on traditional land, the Direct Nation, and I pay my respect to the elders, past, present, and emerging. Today, with me, we have a very special guest, our president for Physical Disability Australia. Welcome back, Andrew.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me on board. Appreciate it.
So today we'll be talking about employment for people with disability. Is it really inclusive? Andrew, do you just want to introduce yourself?
Sure, no problems. Thank you. I bring you greetings from Wajak Noongar Buja. I live in Perth in Western Australia. I am a 53-year-old male and I identify as having a disability. I am a left below knee amputee and I have been that way for 8 years. I'm married. I've got two old grown-up children, adult children. And one of those, my son identifies as having an intellectual disability. So I've been playing in the disability world for, nearly 30 years now. My goals, I suppose, for what I want to achieve is I want to see that representation of people with disabilities in every part of life and our communities in Australia.
Yeah, we need to, create change, not only for ourselves, but for our community, our disability community. Build on that peer movement. So, Andrew, in regards to employment for people with disability, there was a recent job summit. So, Andrew, tell us a bit about the job summit and what it means for people with disability.
The job summit itself was held in Canberra, and in the last couple of days, they've been doing some more around that job summit as well. And it was set up by the Albanese Labor government to try and get a handle on the state of play of employment in Australia, and specifically to address this issue of underemployment, and then look at, for us specifically in the disability community, is how we fit into that and where our roles are and what our roles can be. So the job summit itself is shining a light on the possibilities and getting people with disabilities into employment, into mainstream employment. And from what I've seen of some of the things that have been said over the last couple of days, there's been a lot of talk around the Australian disability enterprises. There's been a lot of talk about the supported wage systems. They've had some pretty heavy hitters at the table. I understand that the CEO of Qantas is at that particular table, Alan Joyce. There's the CEO of the Wesfarmers Group, a bunch of politicians from all over Australia, a lot of union representatives are at that particular table as well. So I think, Evie, it's about getting that representation and just opening up opening up their eyes to see that people with disabilities actually can work and want to work.
Of course. We have the right to work. We also need to work. We need to, I guess, support ourselves in our, living. And yeah, look, we need to keep up with our cost of living.
Because it's going up. It's not going down.
In regards to, disability employment services, how reliable are they? For, I guess, finding employment for people with disability.
I know that this is a very contentious topic at the moment, particularly in the last couple of weeks. There's been a lot of talk about shutting down some particular disability employment services around Australia. I personally have never used one, but I actually have worked for one prior to becoming an amputee. I actually worked for one of the biggest disability employment services in Western Australia, and my role there was as a job coordinator. So basically, I helped people to understand their job, how to learn their job, and then supported them over a period of time to complete the tasks required to maintain their employment. The question that you've asked me is very interesting, because how reliable are they? In some cases, they've been really good. And in some cases, they've been really, really bad. So I think that particularly with disability employment services, if they're focused on a dollar outcome, then that's probably not a really good space to have it in. But if they're actually focused on the person with disability and maintaining open employment, then that's a totally different ballpark. I have heard a lot of stories from a lot of different people around Australia just saying that, they've been these people are qualified. They may have trade certificates. They may have degrees. They may have master's degrees. And in some cases, I actually know of two people who've got doctorates who were working through disability employment services and then, going into being put up for jobs like working manual labor. So how reliable are they? As I say, sometimes they're good and sometimes they're just not so good,
Yeah, look, as a user of these disability employment services back then, I'm leaning towards the negative in terms of reliability, and I'm sorry for those out there, not so reliable because I'm one of those people that ended up getting 4 degrees, one master, a bachelor, a certificate, and a diploma. And
Wow.
so, yeah, when I went to these disability employment services, I really lasted a month in the office because of the miscommunication,
Yeah,
because of the way
absolutely.
that I was being handled.
That's a really good point. And I think that when you put the person with a disability who's going in for employment, and all you see is a dollar sign, you're actually not getting a really good outcome out of that, and it becomes then almost like a revolving door that the person with disability goes in, they're put up for a job A, they don't want to do, B, it's beneath their qualification level as we're talking now, and then they get to the point where they go, I'm just going to walk out because it's not worth me doing that. So
Exactly.
when you start to put a dollar value on a person, that's where we start to get issues as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just a continuous process. It's like a cycle.
Yep,
It never ends, and
absolutely.
you're in the middle.
Yeah. And that, like we're talking about employment. Employment is a human right, to be productive. If a person with a disability chooses to go to work, more power to them. But they should be supported properly to go to work,
Exactly. Exactly.
and not treated as a dollar. They should be treated like a human being.
Exactly. Spot on. Spot on. You well said. We all have rights.
Yep,
Everyone that disability has rights, and yeah,
absolutely,
we're more than just
absolutely.
dollars. Thank you for the
No,
answer.
that's
What is being done, to improve employment for people with disability?
look. There's some really good projects going on around Australia. We at Physical Disability Australia, we are always looking at opportunities to further our own community in the physical disability space. I know there's people like Dylan Alcott is out there and promoting open employment. There's a couple of other organisations, People with Disabilities Australia, are looking into that open employment space as well. So I think it's becoming, I'm not going to say a super hot topic, but it is definitely on people's radar. So it's being talked about. I think that in where we live and where we work is that in that space is like, if as long as it's been talked about, but it's being talked about with the right people. So
Yeah, yeah.
this job summit in Canberra that's going on at the moment, I'm really hoping that the outcomes of this are going to be that those folk who are there start to see that there is a workforce available to them who want to work, and then we can start to have those conversations around perhaps job carving, perhaps job modifications, things like that. But we need to start somewhere, and we need to have those conversations. But I'm going to caveat that by saying that if we, as people with disabilities, are not at those tables, then we're not included. The thing about
Mm,
employment is that inclusion, because we want to be valued, and we get our value from who we are as people, but also what we do, where we live, who we associate with. That is what we're talking about in the human rights space.
exactly. I think we need more representation than high profile. I guess celebrities like Dylan Oka himself.
Yeah,
Uh,
look, absolutely, absolutely, and there's nothing wrong with high profile at all. I think, I know you're the president of your particular organisation. I'm the president of mine. In the last couple of weeks, I've got some really good traction with the media around some issues, and Physical Disability Australia are putting that we're putting those papers out there. We're putting those submissions out there saying, you know what, this is what we stand for. The more people like you, like me, like all the other guys, Dave and John, Jonathan, and Andrew, all those guys you've got on board with doing Australian disability and doing this, CripChat is amazing, because you're actually bringing it out into the light, and that people start to talk about it. And when people start to talk about it, doors get opened up. So then we have the opportunity then to walk through those doors and address these issues at grassroots level. Because, I mean, look, Dylan is really, really good at what he does. Brilliant tennis player, great speaker, Australian of the Year. Kudos, absolutely kudos to him. But we're talking grassroots level here. And when you're talking grassroots level, it's people like us. It's people like, Jonathan, Dave, all these guys who have struggled through these systems, So
exactly.
I honestly believe it's our job to go out there and put that out in the public, so that the public know what's going on.
Yeah, for the viewers out there, like Andrew said, it's very important that we start creating change, not only for ourselves but for our community as well. Fight
Yep,
for what you
absolutely.
believe is very important.
Absolutely. We are represented in our communities because our communities get to know us. But that's all well and good, but we need to be in those mainstream communities even more. Everybody needs representation, and I know a bit about your background, and you know a bit of mine. I put your hand up to run an organization, and you go, okay, but that's about that representation. You've got it. Sometimes you just got to take that step.
Be that role model.
Absolutely,
Exactly.
absolutely.
Thank you for that, Andrew.
No worries.
From your perspective, from your, I guess, life experience, how has employment, impacted the quality of life for people with disability?
I wanted to explain this two ways. Okay. So first,
Yeah.
personally, because for me, I am a middle class white male.
Yeah.
Okay. I am identified pretty much as being privileged. So
Yeah.
it's a struggle then to add to that a physical disability and go, okay, so if I'm privileged, then I should be able to get what I need or want. But it doesn't always happen. For me personally, I've had to completely change my employment path when I acquired my disability, because it wasn't something I couldn't do the work I was doing previously. So I was forced to actually change my employment path. And when you're 45 years old, that's a very hard thing to do. And in my community of amputees, a lot of the amputees are older blokes like me. So employment has impacted the quality of life for people with disability. There's a whole bunch of different ways we can address that. I think a lot of people with disabilities live on or below the poverty line, and especially if they rely on social welfare, either like disability support pension or which is next to nothing anyway, and then obviously Centrelink if you're on job search and stuff like that. So to have a decent job and a properly paid job would mean the world to a lot of people, and it could be the difference between living in a house and being homeless. It could be the difference between being able to eat one meal a day and 2 meals a day. It can be the difference between having a car and having to take public transport. So employment as a holistic thing creates all these environments that people with disabilities can add to, because we bring to the table some very extraordinary skills that other folk don't have. So I think with, as far as quality of life goes, if a person with a disability chooses to work, then they should be encouraged to do that. They should be supported to do it if they need that support. In an ideal world, we'll see a lot more programs around working with employers to understand people with disabilities. We will see a lot more projects and programs set up for things like the Australian Network on Disability do one about.
Isn't it the Stepping Into program?
Something like that, yeah. But they also have this thing where they've got a little, the tick, like a tick box.
Oh, yeah.
Australian Network on Disability have worked with a bunch of employers who are disability confident employers.
Oh, nice.
So it means that I knew it'd come back. So the disability competent employer is the one who is confident and capable of employing someone with a disability. They don't necessarily have to know the disability, but they are willing to give that person a crack. And I think the bottom line of this whole thing around employment boils right down to that. If you're willing to give someone a go, that I could sit here all day and talk about statistics, and we talk about, all this sort of stuff around people with disabilities don't take so much time off. They turn up to work on time. They, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff, which we all know that. Particularly if an employer is willing to give a person with a disability a go and work with them to learn the job, to create, or if they have to create a job or learn the job to get good at the job, then you're going to have an employee that's going to last a lot longer. And I just think it all comes down to mindset. It all comes down to people's perception and how they view folks with disabilities. I do a lot of training around disability awareness. And, my prosthetic leg is an assistive technology device, but it's also my leg. Without it, I can't go anywhere. For those of us in the community who use wheelchairs, that's your legs. It's not a symbol of pity. It's not a symbol of suffering. It's a symbol of independence. And, I can get out in community. I can do things. So I think this whole thing around employment really needs, we need to take a step back and go, okay, what can we do? What can people with disabilities do? What can employers do? And then put them two together and match them up. And that's, I think, where we're going to have the biggest impact.
Well said. I think, people with disability now need to, take this away and, start advocating for themselves. I think it's very important that we need to be more recognized in our community. We need to work. We need to be able to support ourselves in our everyday lives and our independent living. Thank you very much for allowing us to, pick your brains, Andrew. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate it. Hey, look, you guys are doing a phenomenal job out there. I know it's tough. But I just encourage you guys, all of you, to keep it up and keep up your good work that you're doing. And I'll be more than happy to come back on and have a discussion about whatever you'd like to have a discussion about, mate. I'm more than happy.
No, awesome. Yeah, look, once again, thank you very much, Andrew, and thank you to everyone who's tuned in. We will see you, next week on CripChat. Where we'll talk about all things disability. Enjoy.